welcome to another Tabletop Games blog review. Today we're looking at the new game Sensor Ghost by Wren Games. It's a 1 to 2 player moving maze type of game, lasts about 15 to 30 minutes. Complexity I'd say probably about 2 out of 5, maybe 1.5, ages 10 plus I'd say. The Kickstarter for this game will launch on the 28th of May, so check that out when that goes live and check the components in there, and it'll give you all the information that you need. Imagine the asteroid field scene from Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, where heroes risk their lives to try to get away by entering an asteroid field. Then add to that the AI HAL from 2001, A Space Odyssey, which has gone mad and taken over the spaceship, forcing the crew to try and outwit it. And you basically end up with the gameplay of Sensor Ghosts. The game is described as a moving maze sci-fi puzzle game, but in reality you and your crewmate fight for your lives after barely escaping the assembly space station whose AI had gone mad, and you had to outwit it to get out of live. Now you're on your spaceship headed for Earth, just to find that a crazy AI has made it on board and is messing with the ship's sensors. Not only that, but you have just entered the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, when you discover your ship's radar image has little to do with what's actually ahead of you. Now I won't explain the full game, but basically you have a 5x7 grid of tiles showing either an empty space, an anomaly, a meteorite, or a blocked space which you can't enter. So the free spaces and the boosters are quite useful. The meteorites might deal damage, but you also have a shield that you can charge up, which we can see here. The boosters move you along a space, which can be useful if you go in the right direction, but also can make you hit an asteroid. And these blocked spaces, and there's also gaps over here, for example, these you can't enter. You also have a deck of command cards. So in a 2-player game, you both play command cards, and a solo you play by yourself. And you have the option of moving in a certain direction, so the orientation doesn't matter. Or you can peek ahead at some of these cards to see what's happening ahead of you, because as I said, the radar doesn't really tell you what's happening. The other option is to do a deep scan. Again, you can look further afield and see what's happening there. Or you can try and charge your shields, and you can see it takes 2 tokens, so 2 charges, to actually fully charge a shield to protect you from meteorites. The deck of command cards is limited, so that's your timer, and the orientation of the way you play directions also matters, so you can't suddenly turn around. And not only that, as you move along your meteorite field, as you enter spaces, you flip over the cards, revealing maybe something else, maybe the same thing. So a meteorite might turn into one of these anomalies, and you don't know what's happening, so you really have to be careful what you do and when you do it. Not only that, every time you move, you find that the asteroid field moves along as well. So everything is constantly shifting. Not only that, you actually have to try and collect some of these tiles, which hopefully reveal a virus sample which you have to take back to Earth. So you end up with something like a magic maze where things shift along, as well as memory, because as you flip things over, you have to try and remember what these things were. So can you enter the space safely or not? The whole thing gets very frantic very quickly. So let's get back to the plot. You have to deal with HAL, as I say, which is the AI that's gone mad. It's a bit like Alexa that hasn't quite been trained on your voice yet, and all those 50 tutorial roles when you only wanted 15. You're forced to say as little as possible, therefore, so you can't communicate much with your other player if you're playing a 2-player game. And you also have to think about what commands you issue when, to make sure that you carefully get through this ever-shifting and ever-changing space area, this asteroid field. So you try and power up your shields, you try and run deep scans, and you try and go in the right direction to move through this shifting area of dangerous rocks. Charging up your shields takes time, so it's a bit like Han Solo trying desperately to repair the hyperdrive. You also want to avoid all these rocks, so as I say, you do your deep scans, and then as you maneuver you might encounter these gravity wells, these anomalies, which might catapult you into certain death, or if you're going in the right direction, they might actually catapult you way ahead into a safe zone. It's like a jump to light speed. You have to make sure you get your calculations absolutely right, or you end up embedded in a planet or even a star and die immediately. As you approach Earth, you are told that there has been a quarantine set up because you are infected with viruses, and what you have to do, as I said, you have to try and pick up these samples, these virus samples, hoping that as you pick up these samples they are actually viruses and not just dead rock. And as you pick them up, you can then take them back to Earth, and hopefully they can make a vaccine out of this virus sample to protect you. So suddenly the whole journey doesn't become just a matter of trying to get through the shifting asteroid field, trying to avoid asteroids and huge rocks and dwarf planets. It also becomes a matter of trying to carefully maneuver to these samples to make sure you get what you need to be allowed back on Earth. And the whole thing sometimes feels absolutely impossible. You try and remember everything, you try and steer, you try and play these cards in the right order with your partner as well. And suddenly, as things look absolutely desperate, everything lines up and you can move smoothly ahead, and that feels really satisfying, really amazing. Now, Sensor Ghosts is set after assembly, so you have now escaped the space station. Yet, obviously, as I said, the AI from the space station has made it onto your spaceship and has jammed up all your controls, and you have to communicate very carefully or say very little at all. Both games have similar mechanisms, so you have the idea of playing cards. Both people play the cards, you're flipping over tiles and things, but really the feel of both games is dramatically different. You get a real different experience in Sensor Ghosts. You really feel like you're going through this meteor field, this meteor shower. You're trying to keep alive, trying to collect these samples, checking your shields, you're constantly topping them up. You also got these experts to help you again, which is what you find from assembly as well. But as I say, these two games are really dramatically different. Yet, if you like assembly and you like the mechanisms in there, I'm sure you will also like Sensor Ghosts because of the similarity in those. Yet, as I say, it's a completely different experience, a completely different puzzle. The Kickstarter for this game will launch on the 28th of May, so check that out when that goes live and check the components in there. It'll give you all the information that you need. That leaves me to say thank you very much for listening to this podcast review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a review. If you're on iTunes, that's quite easy to do. If not, feedback, there's a description of this podcast has links to my blog. Please check that out and maybe drop me a comment if you liked what you've heard. Also check out my Patreon and Ko-fi pages if you like this podcast review. Please help me out and try and make more of these amazing podcasts. And that's all. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you'll join me again soon.